The myth of effortless genius is a seductive one. It suggests that talent alone is the currency of success. We are taught to celebrate the prodigy, the natural, the person who seems to glide through life's challenges on innate ability. But beneath the surface of every spectacular failure and every unexpected triumph lies a different, far more critical truth. Talent, raw and unrefined, is merely potential energy. It is not the motor of achievement. This is the story of the discipline gap. It is the unseen chasm that separates those who possess ability from those who actually realize it. This gap is not about intelligence or skill. It is about the systematic, often brutal difference in how individuals approach effort, consistency, and the grueling, unglamorous process of improvement. It is a discipline gap that derails careers, dissolves fortunes, and leaves brilliant minds languishing in obscurity. We will trace this phenomenon through the lives of individuals across various high-stakes fields, from the competitive pressures of Silicon Valley startups to the relentless training regimen of Olympic athletes, and the high-flying world of finance. The question is not, do they have the talent? The question is, do they have the structure, the grit, and the daily commitment to turn that talent into a lasting reality? Our opening hook plunges into the aftermath of a major organizational collapse. A tech company, once hailed as the next unicorn, has imploded. Its founder, a certified genius, is now a footnote. The press blames market forces, or bad luck, or even external competitors. But our investigation begins with a different lead, a single, meticulous daily journal found amidst the wreckage. It details not the company's grand strategy, but the founder's erratic sleep schedule, skipped planning meetings, and repeated failures to follow through on promises. The genius was there. The code was brilliant. The vision was revolutionary. But the discipline to execute was absent. This single journal entry is our first piece of evidence that the biggest threat to great talent is often not external competition, but internal chaos. The narrative immediately establishes that this is a deeper dive than a mere business case study. It is an exploration of human psychology and the mechanics of sustained high performance. We move from the wreckage of the failed company to the sterile, organized environment of a world-class training facility. Here, we see a different kind of subject, an athlete with moderate, rather than exceptional, talent. Yet, this athlete is succeeding. Why? Because their success is built on the bedrock of unyielding, almost monastic discipline. Every hour is accounted for. Every rep is intentional. The juxtaposition is jarring, the brilliant failure and the disciplined success. It immediately forces the audience to reevaluate their fundamental assumptions about success. This book is about what truly matters when the starting pistol fires, not who is the fastest, but who is the most consistent. The discipline gap is a silent killer of potential, an invisible force that elevates the persistent and crushes the merely gifted. We are about to shine a light on its darkest corners. Our exploration of the discipline gap will center on three core subjects, each representing a distinct field where the chasm between talent and execution is most pronounced. First, we introduce Dr. Elias Vance, a theoretical physicist whose early work promised a Nobel Prize. Vance's intellect is described by his peers as unbounded, a mind that could leap 10 steps ahead in any complex problem. However, Vance is a serial procrastinator, a person whose office is a monument to half-finished projects. His lab notes are legendary for their brilliance, but also for their disorganization and the frequent, disruptive shifts in his focus. He represents the tragic figure of untapped intellectual brilliance. Second, we profile Ava Sharma, a rising star architect who is moderately talented but possesses an astonishing work ethic. Sharma's designs are solid and innovative, but not revolutionary on their own. Her success is driven by an obsessive commitment to deadlines, an almost religious adherence to process, and a constant, incremental refinement of her skills. She represents the power of compounded effort, showing how small, daily wins, systematically stacked, can overtake a flash of genius. Third, we examine the career of the Phoenix Investment Fund. This fund was founded by a charismatic, mathematically gifted trader who blew up his first two ventures due to impulsive, undisciplined risks. He was rescued by a co-founder, a former military logistics officer, who imposed a rigid, rule-based trading system. The fund is now highly successful, but only after its reliance shifted from the founder's brilliant gut feelings to the co-founder's ironclad process. The Phoenix Fund represents the institutionalization of discipline, demonstrating that systems can succeed where individual genius fails. We set the stage by defining the core psychological concepts. Discipline is often mistaken for motivation, but they are not the same. Motivation is the temporary desire to start, discipline is the enduring, habituated behavior that ensures you continue, regardless of how you feel. The work of behavioral scientists, such as those studying the transition from hot, emotional, cognition to cold, rational, cognition, is brought in to ground the narrative. Discipline, we argue, is the triumph of the cold, pre-committed self over the hot, impulsive self. The settings for our investigation are crucial: the cluttered, chaotic workspace of Dr. Vance, the hyper-organized, time-box schedule of Ava Sharma, and the risk management obsessed, process-driven trading floor of the Phoenix Fund. These three subjects and their environments provide a constant, real-world contrast. They serve as living, breathing case studies for the theoretical arguments about the necessity of habit, process, and commitment over mere innate talent. Their stories will be woven together throughout the narrative, culminating in a final, powerful lesson about the true nature of high-level achievement. The first major clue in solving the discipline gap mystery comes from a surprising source: the study of expertise development, particularly the work that moved beyond the simplistic 10,000-hour rule. The crucial discovery is not the quantity of practice, but the quality and structure, the element known as deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is discipline codified. It's not just showing up, it's showing up with a highly specific plan to work on your weaknesses, receiving immediate feedback, and relentlessly iterating. It is the purposeful struggle. Our clue is found in the training logs of professional musicians. We compare two pianists from the same elite conservatory. Pianist A practices 6 hours a day, playing the pieces they already enjoy and can perform well. They rely on their prodigious musical ear. Pianist B practices 4 hours a day, but their logs are brutally honest. They spend 75% of their time on the smallest, most difficult passages, isolating them, slowing them down to an agonizing crawl, and using a metronome to fix flaws the audience would never hear. They are deliberately practicing the things they cannot yet do. Pianist A, the more talented, burns out after graduation, unable to sustain the necessary level of performance to compete at the top. They hit a performance plateau. Pianist B, the more disciplined, steadily rises to become a world-renowned concert artist. Their progress is not linear, it is a series of purposeful jumps achieved by confronting and conquering specific deficits. This comparison reveals our crucial discovery: the discipline gap is a deliberate practice gap. Talent allows you to get away with non-deliberate practice for a long time, coasting on initial ability. But once the challenge increases, the lack of structure is exposed. We bring this discovery back to our key subjects. Dr. Vance, the brilliant physicist, admits that his process stops where the initial theory ends. He despises the slogging involved in running hundreds of simulations or meticulously calibrating equipment, the deliberate practice of experimental physics. He is addicted to the thrill of discovery, not the labor of proof. In contrast, Ava Sharma, the successful architect, has a clear system for her deliberate practice. She reviews her completed projects, not for what went right, but for the one specific thing that caused the most delay or friction. Her next project plan always incorporates a new, explicit process designed to mitigate that single flaw. She is constantly turning her weaknesses into codified strengths. The Phoenix Fund institutionalized this. Their daily post-mortem meetings are not for celebrating wins, but for dissecting losses and identifying the single, precise rule violation or execution error that occurred. They treat trading not as an art, but as a repeatable, disciplined system. The discipline gap, therefore, is the choice between the easy comfort of practicing what you know versus the hard, uncomfortable work of isolating and attacking what you don't. This discovery gives us a framework for analyzing success and failure. To understand the discipline gap, we must perform a deep dive into its origins, tracing it back to the formative years of our subjects and the context of modern psychology. The roots of the gap often lie in childhood and early education. The naturally gifted child receives praise for who they are, brilliant, smart, rather than what they did, worked hard, persevered. This creates a fixed mindset, a belief that talent is a static gift. When the fixed mindset child encounters genuine difficulty, the messy middle, where effort is required, their internal narrative dictates that the difficulty is a sign that they are not good enough, after all. They protect their identity as the talented one by disengaging from the effort. This is the origin of Vance's chronic procrastination. The fear of failure paralyzes him from starting the necessary, difficult work. The contrast is the growth mindset, where a child is praised for effort, strategy, and perseverance. This creates a belief that ability can be developed. Difficulty is interpreted as a signal to change their strategy and increase their effort, not as a sign to quit. Ava Sharma, our architect, was not the top student in her class, but her parents and teachers consistently praised her meticulous process and her ability to bounce back from criticism. She internalized a value system where struggle was noble and improvement was inevitable. This is the core context for her discipline. Her work ethic is her identity. We also explore the social and cultural context. Modern professional life, particularly in the knowledge economy, often fetishizes idea generation over execution. The visionary CEO is celebrated, while the operations manager who ensures the trains run on time is overlooked. This cultural imbalance reinforces the fixed mindset. The context of technology also plays a critical role. Instant information and gratification train the brain to expect immediate reward. Discipline, however, is the practice of delaying gratification for a larger, later reward. The discipline gap is exacerbated by a world designed to erode our ability to endure boredom and sustained, unrewarded effort. The Phoenix Fund's co-founder, the logistics expert, brought a military context to the financial world, an absolute zero-tolerance policy for deviation from the established rules. In the military, discipline is literally a matter of life and death, forged in an environment where process trumps personal feeling. He successfully imported this culture of process over ego into high finance. The deep dive reveals that the discipline gap is not a genetic flaw, but a learned behavior, heavily influenced by early feedback and the broader cultural context. It is the failure to build the mental and behavioral machinery necessary to sustain effort when natural talent runs out of steam. The good news is that what is learned can be unlearned, and what is unbuilt can be built. In examining the discipline gap, we encounter two conflicting theories that attempt to explain why talented people fail. The debate between these theories escalates the stakes for our subjects. Theory A, the resource depletion model, ego depletion. This theory argues that self-control and discipline are a finite mental resource, like a muscle that fatigues. Every act of resistance, resisting a distraction, forcing yourself to work, draws from a single, willpower tank. Highly talented people, who are constantly solving complex problems, deplete this resource quickly, leaving them with little self-control left for mundane tasks like organization or following a routine. In this view, Vance is a victim of his own high-level cognitive load. Theory B, the habit automation model. This counter-theory argues that true discipline is not about using willpower, but about not needing it. It posits that elite performance is built on a massive collection of deeply ingrained habits that require almost zero conscious effort. The truly disciplined person has automated their process, freeing up their limited cognitive resources for creative problem solving. This is the system that Ava Sharma and the Phoenix Fund embody. Their success isn't about fighting temptation, it's about making the right choice the only choice. The stakes escalate as Dr. Vance is given a final, make-or-break grant to complete his decade-old theoretical work. If Theory A is correct, his only chance is to somehow preserve his limited willpower, perhaps by reducing all external stress. If Theory B is correct, he must fundamentally restructure his day, forcing himself to build the tiny, non-negotiable habits of a disciplined scientist. The fate of his career, and the potential loss of a transformative scientific idea, hangs on which theory he chooses to follow. The Phoenix Fund, meanwhile, faces a severe market crisis. Their founder, under immense stress, starts advocating for a return to his gut feeling, wanting to abandon the rigid, automated risk management system. This is a direct test of the institutionalized discipline. Does the system hold up against the charismatic but impulsive genius under pressure? If the fund reverts to Theory A, relying on a talented individual's momentary willpower/instinct, the consequences could be catastrophic. Ava Sharma's firm lands its largest ever project, a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar build. The sheer scale threatens to overwhelm her highly structured, small-scale approach. The stakes are her reputation and the financial stability of her entire company. She must prove that her disciplined, automated process can scale up to global complexity, without suffering from the resource depletion that Theory A warns against. The conflicting theories provide a dynamic tension. The narrative argues that Theory A is a convenient excuse for the gifted, while Theory B is the operative truth of elite performance. The ensuing actions of our three subjects will serve as the final empirical test. The battle is internal, between the desire for a quick fix, willpower, and the acceptance of sustained, boring effort, habit. For each of our subjects, there is a moment, a point of no return, where the internal battle between talent and discipline forces a decisive action that will determine their future trajectory. For Dr. Elias Vance, the point of no return arrives not with a grand discovery, but with a simple, humiliating deadline. His university committee demands he present tangible progress on his grant-funded work within 2 months. He is faced with 2 years of disorganized, incomplete data. He realizes he cannot possibly generate the required material through a last-minute, brilliant, all-nighter, his usual, talent-fueled approach. The sheer volume of systematic work needed is insurmountable in a short burst. His decisive action is a desperate, uncomfortable plea for help. He hires a meticulous, process-oriented research assistant, essentially outsourcing the discipline he lacks. This act is a confession that his talent cannot save him from his behavioral deficits. It's a literal point of no return. He commits to a system that will hold him accountable, subordinating his genius to structure. For the Phoenix Investment Fund, the point of no return is the moment of maximum market volatility. The charismatic founder finally overrides the automated risk management system, executing a huge, impulsive trade based on his instinct during a panic. The logic is simple: his talent is superior to the system. The trade is initially successful, a spectacular, short-term win that validates his ego. But the success is a trap. It proves the system can be overridden, thereby fundamentally weakening the collective discipline of the entire firm. The co-founder, the logistics expert, sees this as an existential threat far greater than any market downturn. His decisive action is to immediately trigger a rarely used clause in their operating agreement that strips the founder of his executive trading authority, limiting him to a purely advisory, theoretical role. The discipline of the system wins, but at the cost of internal rebellion. For Ava Sharma, the point of no return is triggered by an unexpected crisis on her new, massive construction project. A critical subcontractor fails to deliver, threatening to halt the entire multi-billion-dollar timeline. A less disciplined firm would panic, blaming external factors. Sharma's decisive action is the activation of a pre-planned, deeply disciplined contingency protocol. Because her team had meticulously documented and modeled every single point of failure during the planning phase, a tedious, disciplined exercise everyone had grumbled about, they immediately pivot to an alternative supplier, using a pre-negotiated contract, within 48 hours. Her discipline didn't prevent the problem, but it contained it. This moment proves that her systematic, low-ego approach is the ultimate form of professional resilience. Her discipline has become a competitive advantage no amount of individual talent could match. In all 3 cases, the characters are forced to choose between the comfort of their innate talent and the hard, necessary work of establishing an external or internal system of discipline. 2 choose the system, one must have the system imposed upon them. The choices cement their paths. The midpoint twist occurs when the focus shifts from the lack of discipline being the cause of failure to the devastating realization that the very same qualities that are perceived as talent often actively work against the development of discipline. The revelation is that the discipline gap is not a deficit, but an unintended side effect of early success. Talented individuals, by definition, can achieve high results with minimal effort in the beginning. This immediate, high-reward feedback loop trains them to believe that the linear correlation between effort and outcome does not apply to them. They learn to value effortlessness. Dr. Vance's research assistant discovers a pattern in Vance's old high school and college records. He consistently skipped study sessions, submitted papers late, and aced exams with minimal cramming. His genius was so profound that he never had to learn how to study. His brain never forged the neural pathways for routine, sustained, or systematic effort because he never needed them. His ability to improvise and wing it was reinforced for 20 years. The twist is that the source of his potential, his speed of comprehension, became the source of his undoing, his inability to execute a process. His talent was a psychological disability in the context of long-term achievement. We explore the scientific basis, the difference between procedural memory, which underlies habit and discipline, and declarative memory, which underlies facts and concepts, where Vance excels. Vance's declarative memory is elite, but his procedural memory for work habits is weak because it was never trained. Ava Sharma's story provides the counter-twist. She was not a prodigy, and therefore, her first attempts at architecture were mediocre. This forced her, from the very beginning, to find a systematic way to improve. She was never rewarded for effortlessness, she was only rewarded for successful, hard-won outcomes. She had to build her procedural memory brick by painstaking brick. Her initial lack of raw talent became her greatest advantage because it forced the development of discipline. The Phoenix Fund's founder, after being stripped of his trading authority, initially sulks. But in his mandated new role, he begins to analyze market patterns with his genius-level math skills, now constrained by the rigid, system-enforced rules. He realizes his greatest ideas were ruined by his execution. The system wasn't restraining his talent, it was protecting it from his undisciplined self. The halfway revelation, therefore, is a profound psychological twist. The discipline gap is the price of premature, effortless success. It reveals that the most critical skill is not the ability to learn fast, but the ability to learn how to be bored and still work, a skill the truly talented are often never forced to acquire. New evidence from the field of chronobiology and behavioral economics emerges, providing a deeper understanding of the psychological impact of discipline and routine. The new evidence centers on the concept of decision fatigue. When we are constantly forced to make choices, our mental energy is drained, leading to impulsive, undisciplined behavior later in the day. The core finding is that disciplined people don't have more willpower, they simply have a life structure to minimize the number of decisions they have to make. The psychological impact of this evidence is transformative. Discipline is not moral superiority, it is superior environmental design. Dr. Vance, under the guidance of his new research assistant, is forced to adopt a rigid schedule. He must start his day at 8 a.m., work on a predetermined task until 1 p.m., and is limited to one specific type of lunch. Initially, he fights this, feeling stifled. But the evidence shows a change. By removing all trivial choices, what to work on, when to start, what to eat, his decision-making capacity is preserved entirely for the complex physics problems. He begins to feel a sense of clarity he hasn't experienced in years. The lack of choice is psychologically liberating. Ava Sharma's daily routine is analyzed as a perfect real-world model of fighting decision fatigue. She wears the same few outfits, eats the same breakfast, and her project management software dictates her priorities the moment she opens her laptop. She has automated everything that is not her core job, architectural design, reducing her daily decision count to almost zero. The psychological impact is a profound sense of calm and control. She channels her high-functioning anxiety not into worry, but into process refinement. The Phoenix Fund system is revealed to be a perfect machine for eliminating decision fatigue in trading. The system does not allow traders to choose to exit a position early, the rules dictate the exit point. This removes the emotional, fatiguing burden of individual judgment and panic, preserving the trader's psychological energy for creative analysis within the bounds of the system. The discipline saves them from their own minds. The new evidence highlights the psychological toll of the discipline gap. For the undisciplined, every day is a new internal battle, a constant drain on willpower that leaves them exhausted and prone to collapse. For the disciplined, every day is a reinforcement of automated behavior, conserving energy and increasing psychological resilience. The psychological impact is clear: discipline is the path to mental sustainability. The truth about the discipline gap, that effort trumps innate ability, is inconvenient and often actively suppressed, not by a conspiracy, but by powerful social and economic forces. One attempt to suppress the truth comes from the talent industrial complex. This includes elite universities and specialized training programs that market themselves based on the exclusivity of their admissions, the rarity of the talent they admit, rather than the quality of the disciplinary systems they teach. If they admitted that they're less talented, highly disciplined graduates often outperform their geniuses. Their brand equity, which is built on the myth of innate superiority, would be undermined. They are incentivized to perpetuate the myth of the brilliant but mercurial genius. The truth about the importance of simple, boring, systematic work is bad for their high-status marketing. A second form of suppression comes from the media and popular culture. Storytelling requires drama, and the dramatic narrative is always the sudden rise of the overnight success or the gifted maverick who broke the rules. The slow, incremental, decades-long rise of the disciplined professional is boring and is therefore edited out of the cultural narrative. This narrative suppresses the truth by reinforcing the idea that success is a matter of luck or a single flash of brilliance, not a lifetime of compounding effort. The Phoenix Fund faced internal attempts to suppress the truth. After the founder was demoted, his loyalists attempted a coup. Their argument was purely emotional: we should trust his talent, not the rules. They were fighting for the romantic idea of the genius against the cold, hard logic of the system. This was an attempt to suppress the truth that the system, which had no ego, was objectively superior to the talented man, who was full of it. The coup failed because the co-founder had meticulously documented the long-term performance divergence between the founder's brilliant trades and the system's steady returns. Dr. Vance's biggest suppression came from his own ego. He subconsciously tried to suppress the truth of his lack of discipline by constantly finding new, complex ideas to distract himself from the necessary follow-through of the old ones. He was trying to prove he was still a genius by demonstrating an endless supply of novel potential, rather than accepting the truth that he needed a basic routine. His research assistant had to use firm, evidence-based confrontation to break through this self-suppression. The attempts to suppress the truth, both external and internal, reveal that the discipline gap is upheld by a comforting, but ultimately destructive, narrative. Our goal is to replace the romantic myth of talent with the actionable reality of process. As the confrontation passes, the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place, revealing the holistic nature of the discipline gap and its true role in achievement. The missing piece is the concept of tolerance for boredom. The most critical work, the refinement, the iteration, the systematic testing, is almost always profoundly boring. Talent makes the initial discovery exciting, discipline makes the final execution possible. Dr. Vance's final piece, he successfully submits his comprehensive, well-documented paper. He achieves this not by having a final, brilliant insight, the theory was already there, but by enduring the methodical, tedious process of running and analyzing thousands of data points that finally provided irrefutable proof. He admits to his assistant that the breakthrough feeling wasn't the intellectual ha-ha, but the simple, quiet relief of reaching the end of a long, boring checklist. He finally understood that a genius's job is not to be constantly thrilled, but to submit to the process. Ava Sharma's final piece, her massive project is completed on time and under budget, a near unheard of feat in the industry. She attributes the success not to any single innovation, but to her team's ability to codify and share their disciplined processes. They created a playbook that removes ambiguity from every stage of the project. The final piece is the realization that discipline is a transferable technology. It is a process that can be taught and scaled, whereas talent is an isolated, non-transferable individual trait. She becomes an evangelist for process over personality. The Phoenix Fund's final piece, they emerge from the crisis stronger, having proven the resilience of their system. The final piece is the realization that discipline provides a profound form of psychological safety. By having pre-committed rules, the team is freed from the fear of making a wrong choice in a high-stakes moment. They can execute with confidence because the process, not their fleeting emotion, is taking the responsibility. This clarity allows their remaining talent to be deployed optimally, within the protective cage of their rules. The final pieces of the puzzle reveal that discipline is not a barrier to greatness, it is the force multiplier of talent. It is the boring, systematic work that stabilizes the brilliant mind, transmits genius into scalable output, and provides the psychological resilience needed to survive crisis. It is the answer to the question, how do you turn a lightning bolt of genius into a lasting light bulb? The answer is the copper wiring of routine. The primary conclusion of the investigation is a definitive statement that dismantles the central myth of talent. Talent is the ability to acquire skills quickly, discipline is the ability to sustain the application of those skills indefinitely. The truth revealed is that the true measure of elite performance is not peak potential but baseline consistency. The discipline gap is a consistency gap. Those who succeed are not necessarily those who can have the highest high, but those who eliminate the lowest low. Their floor is higher. Our evidence from Vance, Sharma, and the Phoenix Fund leads to three core tenets that form the primary conclusion. The law of compounding effort: small, disciplined efforts applied consistently over time yield exponential returns that a large, sporadic burst of genius can never match. Ava Sharma's incremental process of refinement resulted in a body of work that dwarfs Vance's few, brilliant, but isolated papers. The supremacy of system over self: individual willpower is weak, unstable, and finite. Systems, rules, and codified habits, institutionalized discipline, are strong, stable, and infinite. The Phoenix Fund survival was a testament to the system's impersonal logic triumphing over the founder's powerful, but flawed, personal instinct. The paradox of effortlessness: for the truly talented, the greatest necessary effort is the effort to create an artificial struggle. They must deliberately invent processes, deadlines, and accountability structures to simulate the necessary friction that less talented people naturally encounter, which forces them to develop discipline. Vance only succeeded when a system was imposed on him. The primary conclusion argues that success is not a ladder to be climbed by talent, but a marathon to be run by discipline. Talent provides the initial sprint speed, but discipline provides the sustainable pace, the water breaks, and the ability to run through the pain barrier. We conclude that the discipline gap is not a commentary on who is smart, but on who is serious. The serious individual subordinates their temporary feelings and impulses to their long-term, non-negotiable goals. They understand that freedom in performance is earned through rigorous, disciplined constraint in practice. This is the truth that separates the potential footnote from the lasting legacy. The aftermath of their transformations provides a blueprint for how individuals and institutions can close the discipline gap. Their legacies tie the investigation back to modern applications. Dr. Vance's legacy: Vance never wins the Nobel Prize, but he achieves something far more valuable: stability and productivity. He continues to work under a strict routine, which he now voluntarily adheres to. His legacy is the Vance Protocol, a set of guidelines used in his department that mandates highly structured working hours, daily reporting, and the pre-commitment of research direction. It is a system for protecting genius from itself. He teaches that his biggest discovery was not in physics, but in the organizational science of his own mind. Ava Sharma's legacy: her firm's playbook becomes a case study in operational excellence. She is now less celebrated for her designs and more for her flawless execution. Her legacy is the popularization of high-resolution execution, a model that emphasizes hyper-detailed planning and immediate, automated response to process deviations. She proves that the world's most creative and complex endeavors can be made routine, predictable, and therefore consistently successful. Her work inspires a new generation of professionals who are proud to be called systematic rather than visionary. The Phoenix Fund's legacy: the fund system becomes the industry standard for risk management, taught in business schools. Their legacy is the principle of infallible constraint. By proving that a system built on rules is more reliable than an individual built on instinct, they fundamentally shift the debate in high finance. The founder, now an elder statesman, mentors young analysts, teaching them to distrust their gut and respect the numbers, the ultimate act of professional humility. Modern ties: the concept of the discipline gap is tied to the modern phenomena of biohacking and lifestyle design. People are no longer seeking fleeting motivation, they are seeking systematic methods to automate their behavior. The growth of routine-building apps, productivity frameworks, and the focus on environment over willpower all point to a societal shift away from the worship of talent and toward the mastery of self-regulation. The legacy of our subjects is a quiet revolution. They show that the most successful individuals are not those who are exempt from the rules of discipline, but those who are the most ruthless enforcers of their own rules. The true modern tie is the understanding that building a successful life is less an act of creation and more an act of maintenance. The investigation into the discipline gap, why talent isn't enough, concludes with a summary of its findings and the lingering mystery that remains. Concluding summary. The discipline gap is the behavioral chasm between knowing and doing. We have established that innate talent is a volatile, unreliable resource that often actively hinders the development of sustainable, high-level performance. The true engine of achievement is not motivation or genius, but the systematic, low-effort execution of pre-committed habits and routines. Our three subjects demonstrated the transformation. Dr. Vance learned that genius requires a system to be protected from its own impulses. Ava Sharma proved that process and consistency inevitably outcompete sporadic brilliance. The Phoenix Fund showed that institutionalizing discipline provides the ultimate psychological safety and resilience in times of crisis. The lesson is clear: discipline is the tax talent must pay to become success. It is the willingness to be bored, to be methodical, and to submit one's ego to the objective truth of the process. The lingering mystery. Despite all the evidence, the final mystery is why, knowing the truth, does the majority still choose the path of undisciplined talent? The lingering mystery is rooted in human vanity. Discipline is an act of humility. It is admitting that your current self cannot be trusted and that you must build a structure to protect your future self. It requires the gifted to confront the humiliating truth that the most challenging and critical work they will ever do is the boring, systematic work of organizing their own life. The genius narrative is seductive because it allows for the maintenance of a high-status self-image without the commitment of effort. The disciplined narrative is unglamorous because it requires the acknowledgement that excellence is a perpetual, incremental construction project, not a single, lightning bolt moment. Therefore, the discipline gap remains less of an intellectual puzzle and more of a moral one. It is a choice, the fleeting comfort of the idea of success versus the hard, relentless work of success. The book ends not with a final answer, but with a challenge to the reader: your talent is a gift. But your discipline is a choice. What system will you build today to protect your potential from yourself? The blueprint is now laid bare. The gap is yours to close.